The last time I sat in one of these, I fell through it. So just so you know, I'm going to sit very carefully here.
Now you made me be very careful.
I'll take that as a word of warning.
Word of warning, word of warning, word of warning.
So thank you so much for joining us. Part of what this amazing Wait What team demonstrates in various ways is that storytelling, the creativity that goes into this is part of how we create the future. And that this is, just like from that, amazing last talk, it's part of the things where you see how important it is to act and do. And so...
What an inspiration, by the way.
Yeah.
Those are incredible.
Yeah, really good, really good.
Awesome. And so on zeitgeist, this is a word that gets used a lot.
Not in my neighborhood. Not in your neighborhood. Not in my neighborhood. Yeah.
Fair. Right.
A couple of quarters ago, I got called out on the earnings call for saying it too many times.
Yeah. Oh, really?
That's right. That's right.
How many times are you going to say zeitgeist?
Yes, it's one of those German words. And so, so one of the things that that both of you have done in building, kind of amazing institutions, amazing products, cultural memes, is kind of things that have influenced and kind of made cultural zeitgeists. Say a little bit about, kind of like why it is that that's kind of part of, not necessarily the term zeitgeist, but that cultural impact, that cultural creation, that cultural participation is part of what motivates you and your teams, and a little bit of kind of why is, as per the last talk, thinking about the ownership of the creation, why it's so important. And maybe you might want to start.
Well, for me, I didn't enter the business thinking zeitgeist.
Yes, exactly.
What I wanted to do was establish, just tell stories that people who came from where I came from, who looked like me, felt like me, wanted to see. And I found myself on stage performing live performances, 300 plus a year to 30,000 people from the beginning of my career, where there were 30 people in the audience to 30,000 every week. And realizing that as I'm doing this, there's such a hunger and a need, and I'm exhausting myself in trying to go from city to city all across the country to meet so many people. So there comes the pivot to television and film and all of the other things. But for me, it was about recognizing the need, that the hunger for the story. And I think that with a lot of audiences and a lot of businesses, if you could recognize the need, if you could recognize the hunger for what your audience or customers are looking for, it's that it heads it straight on the right direction.
Yeah, and I was just saying, I don't think you can do zeitgeist on purpose. I think it's one of those things that comes from great storytelling that's authentic and true and real to the folks you're trying to talk to. It could be an enormous population, or it could be a rather small population. It's just getting into what people love. Starts with doing it well and doing it authentic and doing it real. I don't think you can. Maybe I would be corrected by TikTok, but I don't think you can make a viral video on purpose. You can't. You get set out to make a viral video and make it connect. People can see right through it. So I just think that the storytelling has to be real and authentic, and that's for me that the zeitgeist piece of it. When people start talking about it, it's when it's done well and takes on a life of its own. This has always been true of mass media, that when people start having the vehicle to talk about it and to share about it, people want to talk about it. And people want to sit around, go to the movie, then come home or sit at dinner and talk about what they just saw. I remember hearing Ron Howard talk about this thing about the drive home test. When you see a movie, and then even if you really enjoy it, it has to be, all the plot holes have got to be fixed so that when you're driving home, you don't go, hey, that doesn't make any sense. How did you get right here? So, but all of that, and if you do it all right and you do it all well, people not only want to see it over and over again, they want to talk about it. They take great pride in helping you discover it too. So I think that's really it's a quality test more than anything else.
And so both of you have saw the kind of the original, the Hollywood system that existed, and realized there were huge gaps, huge needs, right? That it could be played, the game could be played so much differently. Yeah. Some by paying attention to the audience, some by data, some by instinct. Video clerking, even for recommendations, which is something I learned about this. What was that gap that you saw, and then how did you build evolve, pivot into it. And Tyler, why don't we start with you as well? Because I think that's a story that we just so rarely hear here in the Valley and need to.
You know, I think for me, just being on stage, my audience was the research. I didn't have there were no formal algorithms. I didn't have a TikTok brain. You know, I was just trying to gauge it by if I told a joke and the audience laughed, I'm like, okay, great, that works. If I told the joke and it went too far, I'd hear rumble in the audience. So they were all educating me all along the way on everything that I was learning on stage. So as I moved into television and film and understanding that there was such a need for not only representation of people of color, so that people could see themselves on television and they could like, it's so important that our children would see black faces. I grew up seeing very few black people on television, and the exposure and the amount of seeing people do well and having a clear understanding of what that meant to me, I wanted to be able to do that for other people. So as I was going into film and television and growing my business in that sense, I was keeping all of that in mind, that it wasn't just about the stories that people were resonating and relating to. And, I was talking about faith, family, and tragedy and things that are universal themes, but in very specific ways to my audience. So it was about that, but it was also about the understanding of all of us being one unit, one system, one culture that dealing with very common issues and common things. And as I was walking through that and doing that, it was also just the most educational thing for me in the understanding of, I didn't go to college, but I could pay for everybody's college in this room 10 times, and the mistakes that, hold on. Let me finish my thought. In the mistakes that I learned, that I made, the mistakes
they thought it was an offer.
That was that right, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I've learned everything that I use today at Netflix working in a video store.
You got to tell that working in a video store.
Yeah, exactly.
How working at something like a Blockbuster, right? So you work in a video store.
Pre-Blockbuster,
pre-Blockbuster,
83 or something, 84.
You had a mullet and you smoked a lot of pot.
I told you I have beautiful feathered hair.
Beautiful feathered hair.
Okay. Long feathered hair.
Okay, great. Feathered. New TikTok, feathered hair. Let's do it.
Yeah. But this store, there was some serendipity in my life, which is that we grew up pretty poor. We barely kept the lights, the water, and the gas on at the same time, and never the phone. Mm-hmm. So it was weird that my mom, who was never very good with money, bought a VCR before anyone I knew had a VCR. And we had no use for a VCR. Like I said, half the time the power was off. But my mom really, whatever it was, she saw something in me that I didn't yet. And again, by complete luck, the second video store in the state of Arizona opened up a block from my house. So I would walk over and we'd talk to the owner all the time. And he was this fascinating guy who was an ex-air traffic controller at Chicago O'Hare Airport, who hated his job for obvious reasons, a very high pressure job, and he was a very mellow dude. And he had read in a magazine somewhere that the big business opportunities of the 80s would be yogurt shops and video stores. And he said, I hate yogurt and I love movies. So he cashed in all of his money, moved to Phoenix, opened a little video store, had about 900 tapes on the shelf, and I was born. I walked in there. I would spend all my free time back and forth in there. It became my part-time job when I tried to go to college, which I did not get. I got a couple of years to community college and I think 1 credit or something. But my part-time job was working in this store. And what I learned everything, and it could just be you just accept everything as the status quo. But I was curious about why it was things did and didn't work. And I was, getting into this situation where I had obscure taste for a kid from Phoenix, mostly because I wanted to be a journalist. That was my goal. So I used to read out-of-town newspapers. So I knew that there was a John Sayles, and I knew there was a Spike Lee. And those movies did not exist in Arizona. If they did at all, it was for 1 week at one theater called the Valley Art Theater that I would have to take a bus, an hour to get to go see this movie. And it was there for 4 or 5 days and gone. And then literally gone from the culture. And I thought, wow, this is the calling of the video store, is to, put these art film and documentary and foreign language film and smaller films to a public, to a broad public. And I really struggled to understand why they didn't work everywhere. These movies were great. You know, for me, I saw Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing the first, She's Gotta Have It the first time. And I remember thinking, what is this? It's in black and white, and sometimes the music's louder than the dialogue, and they walk, but their feet don't touch the ground. And it was just, it was really an awakening of what cinema could be.
I was confused when I saw it, but go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
It's part of the zeitgeist.
That's right, zeitgeist. That's right.
And so I thought, well, why doesn't this work? And it turns out that those movies are great, and there are plenty of people who like them, just not enough in the 5-mile radius that our store served. So the trade radius of that video store, there just wasn't enough people who were open to that kind of entertainment. So the stuff that works was pretty mainstream. And so basically, if you had back then a video to rent cost about $100 to put on the shelf. And we always had more movies than budget, so you had to pick what to program, and those movies got pushed by the side because it was easy not to put them on the shelf. But I figured out the bigger the trade radius, the more likely you can make that stuff work. So little niches can be big businesses if there's enough people to serve. So the reason why these art films and foreign language films, and they work well in New York and LA, is just the population density. And when Netflix came, when I joined Netflix back in the early 1999, when I first met Reid Hastings, and then yes. When I joined in early 2000, so 22 years ago, we were just mailing DVDs around, but it solved the trade radius problem. Yes. We had one inventory that we mailed all over the country, so you could serve every taste. And there was a real business in these movies, and people, if they had the opportunity to choose them and find them, they want them. They just were never served to them because they maybe didn't live in a dense enough neighborhood. So to me, like all those different nuances about people, and I worked behind the counter, and I had a weird sense of memory, but now my memory's almost shot. But when people come in and say, oh, I like this or I didn't like this, I would kind of tick, and I figure out like, okay, well, if you like movies like this, you're gonna like this one because I remember these. And I watched the stores were empty all day, so you watch everything. So I really did have a good database, I guess. And so, but it was more nuanced than algorithms are now in a way, because you could say easily that if you liked Pulp Fiction, you probably would like Rashomon. But everyone who likes Rashomon doesn't like Pulp Fiction, and vice versa. But you get a sense of people like this, don't like this, and then, but that doesn't scale, a bunch of me behind the counter. So, yes. So to me, like all those things all started behind that video store. And we still today, it's all about consumer science and taste-based algorithm and scaling. How do you budget, how much to spend on a product, because understanding what the potential size of the audience is, all those things I learned in the video stores. We kind of perfected in the old national DVD business, which prepared us for where we are today.
So Tyler, when you started seeing this massive trade radius from Netflix, what did that make you think and see for what kinds of projects that there was such a gap in the culture that you could start doing and you could start partnering? And then how did you guys start working together?
Well, the first thing is I was always told by other companies that movies with black stars or black people don't trade internationally, they don't travel internationally, they don't do very well. And you know, I remember Will Smith invited me to tour with him when he was doing 7 Pounds. And I went over with him and went to all these different countries. He's like, Tyler, these countries are small. They're smaller than Texas. You've just got to go in and work every market. I was like, okay, great, I'm going to do that. I go back and I was like, I'm excited. Like, well, we could go here we go to Italy and I'll work it. And like, no, black people, meh. So immediately upon the release of my first film with Netflix was Fall from Grace, and then the Medea one that we did, watching it be #1 in so many countries blew my mind. I'm like, wow, so all of this information that had been told to me to all of these years had been wrong. And it was just nobody would invest in it or scale up to it. So to have Netflix as the wind in my back for that, and even for Jazzman, the movie that we just released, which was a total pivot for me, it was really exciting to have a company that gets it and understands it, also has all the information and the data that can tell you, hey, this is where you over-index here. Look at this country, look at that country, look at that country. I'm like, oh, I've got to get some visiting going on. So it's really been amazing to have that and that wind at my back for sure.
Let's stop a minute at Jazzman Blues, because this is a very special project.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, right.
Yeah. This has been an idea for a while. This has been in a long birth process. Say a little bit about it.
Yeah, I wrote it in 1995 after I couldn't afford to go to theater. So I would always sneak in at intermission. That's why people would tell me all my movies all seem like one act, because I would always see the second act. But I got a chance to meet August Wilson after one of his plays. I think it was 2 Trains Running. And I was telling him about the show that I'd done, and how people were saying it's chitlin convention circuit, which is a circuit where black people traveled when they couldn't get into white establishments during Jim Crow, and it wasn't as highbrow or sophisticated as other things. So I was telling him that, and he encouraged me to just go home and write what's in my heart. And I went home and I started writing Jazzman that very night, and that was in 1995. And it took 27 years to get made, and wouldn't have gotten made without this guy, Scott Stuber, and everybody at Netflix. So that was a full dream come true for me, because it's a period piece. It's set in the 40s. It's a very different, it's a departure from the way I shot it to the whole story. And I needed the support of someone like a Netflix who has that, all of those algorithms to say, this is where we think this will work, this is how it's going to do, and this is what we know the audience will love about it. So having a company with all of that information at the touch of a button is really great, because I got my information from like grandma on the street. You know, I'm just like, what'd you think of the movie? Oh, baby, you need to work on that a little bit. You know, but to have all that information is very helpful. Very helpful.
Yeah. And
but I think it just goes to the conventional wisdom is often wrong,
yes.
but it is incredibly powerful.
Yes.
And it usually comes down to somebody said it a long time ago and nobody challenged it.
Yeah.
And I had a funny, unrelated story, but Tony Bennett, I'm a big fan and friend of Tony's, and 10 years ago, we were in Paris. He did a show in Paris, and my wife and I, Nicole, went to the show. And after the show, I said, "Oh, I was surprised that I thought that Tony Bennett would be a huge draw in France." And he said, and I talked to him after the show, and I said, and he said, "This is the first time I've ever performed in Paris." Wow. And I said, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah, in the '60s or the early '60s, the record label told me I was an American act. So they never booked me and sold me or promoted me outside of the U.S. And I never. So it was only, just 10 years ago.
Yeah, just 10 years ago. Yeah. And which even speaks to theaters. Like there are a lot of theaters in certain different parts of the country that when you talk about those movies, like Spike Lee movies that go there for 5 days and gone, and you had to take a bus to see it. Like a lot of my movies wouldn't play in certain theaters because they didn't want to attract the audience that I attract to those neighborhoods. So it was always a challenge, and I was dealing with so many things. So again, to have Netflix and streaming, it's
because trade radius. And it's direct to the people.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So one of the other, speaking of conventional wisdoms, one of the other things that you know, Ted, you and Netflix and Reid all really surprised, I think, Silicon Valley with was, oh, we're going to do original content. And we're like, oh, we're tech. You guys, you're part of us. You're tech people. Like this original content thing, that's not going to work. So say a little bit about like the genesis of it, and then what are the insights bringing to it that allow such amazing things as Jasmine Blues?
My son would get a big kick out of me being called the tech person, by the way. But
I hate to break it to you.
Exactly. But I will tell you, back then, we had built the business. I met Reid in 1999, and he had this audacious statement, which was, someday the internet's going to get so fast and so cheap that all filmed entertainment is going to come into the home on the internet. This was in October of 1999. And at that time, zero entertainment was being put into the home on the internet. And it seemed pretty implausible at the time.
Because of dial-up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Someone emailed me a video clip. Took me a week to open it up.
That's right. That's right.
But that was it. That was it. But that was the vision from the beginning. So we had this. We used to keep this graph of the cost of postage to mail the DVDs around and the cost of bandwidth, and they were going like this. And we said, as soon as they get right there, as soon as they cross, that's when we're going to start streaming. And if we stream any sooner, we'll waste money because no one will be able to watch it. And if we wait too long, someone's going to beat us to it. So that was the big crossover point that we had. And we got in. We had to license content to stream. It was just junk that the studios hadn't otherwise sold. No one understood what the digital right was yet at that time. So we started, little by little, getting better and better. We gave it away for free if you got the DVD service, and then we figured someday the streaming will be very good enough that we'll be able to break it out. And we did this deal with Starz, where we got Disney and Starz movies in there, or Disney and Sony movies in, and it got better. We found this weird loophole in the pay TV licensing where you could get foreign language film, documentaries, and they were all exempt from the pay TV deals. So if you were Warner Brothers, so if you had HBO had Warner Brothers deal and Warner put out a foreign film, I could buy it. So the first time we did it was La Vie en Rose, amazing movie. Pan's Labyrinth from Guillermo del Toro. All these movies were passed on otherwise by the studios.
I'm seeing the video, Clerk.
You feel it?
Yeah,
you feel it? So for us, it just kept getting better and better. And then now, remember, this is a pretty tech company at the time, and everyone's talking about it, saying, look, the more people watch, the longer they stay. They tell a friend, so we need a lot of content. So people are getting a lot of content, and in that equation, all viewing is pretty equal. And we had second run, we had reruns basically from everybody. And I said to Reid, I said, at some point, if we're right about this thesis, all these places that are selling us their content will not sell us their content anymore because they're going to compete with us. That's the way, if TV is going to be this, they're going to be in TV too. And at the time, we were doing great. The business was running fine. And then we said, we'll do a visual content eventually. And I said, look, this is something we're going to have to get good at. And I don't know exactly what the entry point is, but we knew we had to do it. And we didn't need to do it at that moment. But I knew that if we didn't, we just kind of like waiting for those lines to cross, postage and bandwidth, that if we waited too long, that we get beat. So.
And what were the very first things you did to start?
Total opportunistic. The very first deal we did for an original show on Netflix was House of Cards. It was, I thought if we're going to do this, let's not do it in a way that after it doesn't work, we'd say, oh, we didn't try hard enough. It wasn't big enough, wasn't ambitious enough. Let's go all in on something that everybody wanted. So at that time, it was like one of the more competitive pieces that was going on out there. We had never how do we compete with HBO and AMC and FX and everyone who was going after that show? We'd never created or released an original anything, give them what for me was a bad deal and for them was a great deal, which is okay, it's a pioneer tax. And the way that deal took shape, it wasn't that they needed money, so we couldn't just overpay them. It was how to completely bend the deals and say, at that time, you usually would get a deal to say, okay, come in and you could develop your scripts, and if we like them, we'll go to pilot. If we go to pilot, we'll go to season. But there was really no such thing as a full season order, and certainly, so I said, well, let's give them 2 seasons. So we just went in and said, like, I'll give you 2 seasons, no notes, and the only thing we say is that you have to put your name on it.
Yep.
So this time, and by the way, those names were David Fincher, who had never directed television before, Bo Willimon, who was nominated for an Oscar at that time, who wrote 3 beautiful scripts that we got to read at the time. So the big risk for us was, I looked at the business, I looked at that title, I looked at what would happen if it didn't work. The kind of risk-reward analysis was, if this doesn't work, we will have terribly overpaid for one title on Netflix. We're kind of at risk all the time of that. But if it does work, we could fundamentally change the direction of the business.
Yep.
So that felt like a good switch.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's really great.
Yeah. Amen.
Can I just give an example of not pivoting?
Yes, of course.
Blockbuster.
Yes,
I mean,
exactly.
this is happening, and Blockbuster's not pivoting. It's just like, can you imagine CEO going, oh, we're good. We don't have to worry about that. Oh, the internet, streaming, meeting, that's never going to happen. So, yeah.
And then all that unconventional wisdom, the biggest show in the history of the world and the history of Netflix is Squid Game, a Korean drama that caught fire around the world thanks to all those things. But mostly it's because, how do you scale? Scale. That's the name of the conference, the thing that keeps me up at night. How do you scale? For me, it's a lot about distributed decision making. If we didn't have an unbelievable team led by Min Young in Korea, who's deep in the creative culture in Korea, knows those storytellers and knows that market, they would not have recognized what everyone else missed in Korea, which was that movie was being pitched for about 12 years as a movie, turned down by everybody in Korea. And our team recognized, oh, it's just not a movie. Yeah. It's a TV show. Yeah. And why don't you take some time and go out and redevelop those scripts? And he did and came back, and it was an incredible phenomenon. So, and this was in the world of people in America don't want to watch subtitles and dubs, and nobody knows a Korean actor, and all these things, and just kind of defied everything if the storytelling is true and authentic and great and has some source of connection.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things I love about this kind of the global trade radius, the bringing entrepreneurs from everywhere, is that then you can have this kind of undiscovered gem. And this is one of the things that, for example, you in Atlanta go, well, I understand that Hollywood has all this network advantage, has all this strength. I'm going to build this company here. And I'm going to take a different approach to ownership. I'm going to do it. Describe that some, because I think that's a particularly important thing after the 15% pledge for people to understand how that plays.
Well, my father was a subcontractor, and he built houses, and he would come home every week and he'd make $800, and everybody would be so happy he made $800. But I'd watch the man who owned the house sell it for $80,000. And I always wanted to be the man who owned the house. That ownership was always key to me. And in watching Oprah's, yeah, that's
100%.
Watching and reading about Oprah owning her talk show, I thought, what does that mean to own it? So so as I started in the business, I knew ownership was going to be very, very important because, you know, everybody at one point was talking about Oscar so white, Oscar so white. And while people were talking about Oscar so white and trying to fight for a seat at the table, I was down in Atlanta building my own because I didn't want to be in a position of feeling like I have to fight when I have a huge audience that's following me, that love what I do, that they'll be my focus. And if I can make this strong enough and I can build this studio strong enough and introduce as much diversity as I can coming up through this portal in Atlanta, everybody will have to pay attention. And to see so much diversity happening in Hollywood right now, and to see all these mandates and people getting opportunities and chances, I'm really, really excited. And I think a lot of that started with just the fight of Tyler Perry down in Atlanta, having to show and teach people how to do these jobs and know them well enough so that when they got into these Hollywood systems and onto these shows, they were ready and ready to go and ready to build. So those things were very, very important to me. The ownership, the building this ecosystem, the giving people opportunities who've never had chances to be in this business and to watch them thrive. It's been really, really exciting for me.
Amen.
Yeah.
Tyler, Ted, I had 30 questions that I didn't get to. I mean, literally, there's so many important things to talk about.
We can keep going. Everybody else can wait. We can keep going. Yeah.
I think there's a hook somewhere.
She's carrying it right there. She's carrying it. Yeah.
So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
It's awesome. I look forward to continuing.
Thank you, Reid. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you. It was great.
What's said at the summit stays at the summit.
Everybody will have to pay attention.
Almost no one sees this coming. Those founders are becoming more globally ambitious. They're coming after your talent, your capital, your market share.
The difficulty is when a team has been working so hard on one thing.
If you are trying to use your time and your talent and your money in the service of others, the work will never end.
We have to deal with inequities.
It's different if you're a founder, but when you walk into something so big and so perfect and so successful, you know, it's not about me. It's about me becoming a part of it and just evolving it and making it better.
The thing that I love about it, and that makes me so optimistic, is that it's just creating more dialogue.
I'm here to tell you that, wow, human innovation's incredible.
This is Masters of Scale Summit.